Hey, what's up, guys? It's Jonathan, man. Sorry if you guys hear any extra noises. We got a couple of dogs here, so I know that seems to be an issue with a lot of us that are recording from home. We have a lot of things going on, kids, dogs. So, I'm very happy and relieved that this semester is almost over, but at the same time, I'm, kind of sad because wish I would have known you guys a little. And, meet up in a physical setting is so much better as far as fellowshipping. But either way, man, it is what it is. So for my presentation today, I'm going to talk about premarital counseling, and the reason for that is because just to give some quick backstory. As a teenager growing up in the church, I looked up and I valued many married couples in my church. And one married couple that really stood out to me that I really valued, and I wanted to have that type of marriage was the one of my brother and sister-in-law. And although at the time I never knew I was going to marry my wife, even less fall in love with her, I always sought out advice from my brother-in-law whenever I needed any sort of advice on how to approach a girl or what to do when dating. And as time passed, my wife built up the courage to ask me out to be her boyfriend. So she made the move, guys. And in the beginning, we took it really slow. Me being 15 and her being 13 at the time. I didn't want to rush anything and thought it would be best to just be friends and get to know her. So we gave it about a year and a half. Honestly, guys, to this day, I still think that was way too soon. Um, and by the time that it was her 15th birthday, I finally asked her out. So as we grew up in our relationship, we were building this reputation of school as at school as the high school sweethearts. Everyone knew that we loved each other and we were basically inseparable. So once we graduated from high school, we began looking into our future, and marriage was at the top of our priority, and I wanted to make sure that we achieved that. So when I was 23, I made the plunge and I finally asked the girl of my dreams, the love of my life, to marry me. And thankfully, guys, she said yes, and we began the process of wedding planning. So upon planning our wedding, we had a ton of things to worry about. And you guys know those that have done the wedding planning. You know how it feels from the tux rentals, the venues, the churches, picking the right church or picking the person that's going to marry you, who's going to be your best man, your maid of honor, who's going to be your court, where you're going for your honeymoon. We were so busy that we barely had any time to spend together. So for the first time, guys, our relationship felt like a job and not something that we enjoyed. It felt like a 9 to 5. I never questioned our relationship, but I needed to reach out to my brother-in-law in the hopes that I can receive some sound advice, some good guidance. And I took him out to, one day I took him out to some Taco Bell, as any good brother-in-law would do, and I opened up to him. And one of the things he highly recommended me to do was, and it totally slipped my mind, was to do premarital counseling. And he said he did it with his wife. It opened up a lot of things and taught them things about each other that they never, knew about each other. And as we continued speaking, he recommended that that I spoke to a pastor or a counselor, especially one that we didn't know, so we can be, somewhat comfortable as possible, as well as having unbiased counseling. So, to sum it up, man, to sum it up in a definition, premarital counseling is a type of therapy that helps couples prepare for marriage. And premarital counseling can help guarantee that you and your significant other will have a strong and healthy marriage. And by doing so, it's going to give you a better chance of having a stable and satisfying relationship. And I know many times people, think of premarital counseling, is for relationships that need repair or who aren't, couples that aren't sure if they're ready to get married, but that's not the case. Couples who take premarital counseling, those are couples who are serious not only about getting married, but also staying married. Therefore, I highly recommend and encourage anyone serious about marriage to take premarital counseling. So, Seth Meyers in The Benefits of Premarital Counseling, Successful Marriage, he says, quote, The best insurance policy a couple could ever. I'm sorry. Yeah, Seth Meyers calls premarital counseling the best insurance policy a couple could ever purchase. It truly is the smartest decision and the best investment a couple can make. And like I stated before, I know there's a lot of fears behind premarital counseling. Excuse me, guys. I know there's a lot of fears behind premarital counseling since we naturally think that talking openly about problems can lead up to having more problems unfolding, eventually just, destroying a relationship beyond repair. However, when you reveal a lot of these problems and release these angers and frustration, it actually allows couples to move past them and start working on finding the best solution towards these problems in a controlled environment. And doing so can bring about the couples not only liking each other again, but strengthening that bond that they value. Which brings me to the breakdown and reasons why we should pursue premarital counseling if we're truly serious about getting married. So, upon research and from personal experience, premarital counseling can help couples improve their relationships before marriage. And some of the things that are usually covered are, communication, finances, roles. There's many other things, but those are the three that I really want to focus on. So, per Riggs and Tweedle in our textbook, they said many couples only manage a few hours of premarital counseling with their pastors. However, to properly prepare and reap the full benefits of your relationship, couples should commit to a much longer period of time, between 6 to 12 weeks, with a counselor before marriage. Honestly, guys, I never knew this. I just gave it about 4 weeks, but I guess I got to do more digging. But it is important that a couple that is serious about marriage takes their time on this and really assess the relationship before taking that important step. And another key thing in marriage, and I think it's one of the most important keys in any marriage, is communication. And just like your workplace, when working in ministry or serving in ministry, or even in your family, right? Or with friendships, communication is a very important part of a relationship. And since we aren't born as mind readers, we need to talk about how we feel and show complete transparency, especially to our spouses. And with communication in a marriage, it brings spiritual growth as well as unity. So the call of a husband and a wife is to use words to better understand their spouse, as well as your spouse getting to understand you better. And when communicating with each other, I always believe Scripture gives us the best advice on how to talk to each other. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25 to 27 says, "Therefore, having put away falsehood, let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are the members of one another. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil." And many times in our anger and bitterness, communicating is easier said than done. I get that. I've struggled with that before. However, Scripture guides us to always speak the truth to our neighbor, allowing us to be angry, yet not allowing the sun to go down on our anger. And it further instructs us in verse 29. It says, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." Meaning, as a couple, our communication should be that of building one another and helping each other, not putting each other down. And Osra, the author of Effect of Premarital Counseling on Marital Satisfaction, the author says, and I quote, "Ineffective communication creates an interpersonal gap which is experienced in all aspects of life. Lack of necessary skills for start and continuation of a happy marriage can lead to loneliness, disease, stress, feeling of incompetence, work dissatisfaction, family problems, and even death," unquote. So miscommunication and lack of communication are usually the first signs of a strained marriage. And it can even lead to separation or divorce. So taking premarital counseling addresses these issues up front and begins tackling it to its core, guys. Some of the sessions include active listening and controlling feelings and emotions, or how to work with those feelings and emotions. This helps you on how to cope with anger and frustration in a healthy manner, as well as provides valuable information to listen to your spouse and address any miscommunication on the spot. Other sessions that come about are, like social relations with family and friends. They help build a better relation with certain family members, like your in-laws and the friends of your spouse. Which then I'm going to talk about finances now, which Scripture indicates in Genesis 1:28 that and God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth." While God is the creator of the heavens and the earth, we are called to be good stewards. And the meaning of stewardship is managing God's blessings according to God's will for His glory alone. This includes our time, talents, treasure, relationship, marriage, employment, our ministry, and of course even our stuff. And if any of you guys know Dave Ramsey, one of the things that he says is that money fights are the second leading cause of divorce behind infidelity. So couples who argue about finances, they have on average of about $30,000 in consumer debt. So bringing debt into your marriage causes couples to look towards the past instead of looking into the future. And speaking from experience, fighting about money was one of the hot topics in my marriage. It wasn't until I really sat down and we started working on our finances as a couple, and gave ourselves a clear picture of where we're at, that we started fighting less and less about money. So Dave Ramsey suggests for us to start with the 7 baby steps. The first step is to save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. Second step is to pay off all your debt. Every single debt, from your car debt to your credit card debt, any sort of medical debt, student debt, stuff like that. All your debt except for your house, using the debt snowball. The third step, once you're done with that, is to save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund. So you know how in step one we said to save $1,000. Now you're saving 3 to 6 months of your expenses, and you're not using that for anything else, just strictly for emergencies. If you get laid off, if your AC breaks down, something that is required as an emergency. After that, step number 4 is to invest 15% of your household income in retirement. And then step 5, save for your children's college fund. And then step 6 is to pay off your home early. And the last one, step 7, is to build wealth and give. So by following these baby steps, you're going to be able to live a life that is debt-free and be part of the marriages that never argue about finances. And one of the important things that we did was we built a budget. So every single, like about the last week, towards the end of the month, me and my wife, we sit down and we start building our budget. What are we spending next month? So for August, August, that's now coming up. Whose birthday is in August that we need to buy a gift? What's going on? How much money are we spending on gas? How much money are we just build a budget. The Every Dollar app is a good tool to use. It's absolutely free, and it really keeps track of what you're spending, and it really gives you a clear vision on what you're doing with your money. And then the last one is roles. So growing up in a Hispanic household, specifically a Cuban household, the term machismo is one that is used very often to depict men as purely financial providers and to hold house chores like the likes of a handyman. And men don't really handle much of the domestic chores like laundry, doing the dishes, cooking, cleaning. We usually handle things like car maintenance. We need to change a tire, change the oil, change the battery of the car, yard work if we need to cut the grass, and fixing electrical issues within the house. And per Sanja Stutzman, and I quote, she says, machismo was shown by being the head of the household, making decisions for the family, deciding where his family would live based off of his career, and having control over the finances. Unquote. Now that I'm married, I've taken more of a joint partnership role, more of not a 50-50% type of thing, but more of 100. I give 100% of myself, she gives 100% of herself. Meaning we have roles. We understand each other's roles, but on the account, once chores aren't done, the other spouse comes in to help. So for instance, when I come home from work, my wife usually is cooking by then because she comes in from work a little earlier than I do. Um, and during that time, I make sure that the table's set up and the baby's been changed, right? And I also take that time to interact with my daughter since I haven't seen her all day. So it's in, and if she comes home, then I'll help her cook and whatever she needs, or if she needs me to cook, I can do that too. So it's very important to discuss roles and have open communication and expectations towards these roles. A lot of times in marriages, we fall into the trap of assuming gender roles that eventually bring up held back resentment. Also, as husbands, guys, we should definitely consider our wives when it comes to household chores, especially if our spouse is working a full time job like we are. Per Riggs and Tweedle in our textbook, it says, and I quote: "A study shows that in combination of all the household chores, women spend a total of 40 hours per week, while husbands bring in about 19.9 hours a week." So, guys, we need to pick it up just a little bit. So to as I'm nearing the end of my presentation, based on my research as well as my experience, my approach on helping someone and guiding someone with this is to encourage them to strengthen their marriage even further by seeking premarital counseling. If they want to have a strong and healthy marriage, to seek that. Sharing my testimony about how my relationship was before premarital counseling, but after the fact, it really grew our relationship mentally as well as spiritually. And it truly gives you the freedom to ask the hard questions during premarital counseling and receive that guidance from someone who is seasoned and experienced in the field. Remember, Proverbs 11:14 reminds us that where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in abundance of counselors, there is safety. So I would also, while recommending that, I would also follow up with the couple and help them any way they can. Any questions they have, I would help them to the best of my abilities, from praying for them to having weekly meetups and have just good conversations, as well as setting up an example to what can happen with some marriage counseling under their belt. They can slowly but surely warm up to the idea. And per Karen T. Sullivan, in the recruitment of engaged couples for premarital counseling, um, it says, and I quote: "Finding a program that is educational and insight oriented also appears to be of considerable importance for couples." So, also making sure to research premarital counseling that you're looking for. Finding counseling you need as a couple is going to go a long way towards a satisfying marriage. So, with that being said, man, that's the end of my presentation. My research was based on a couple of web sources, mostly journals and our textbook. And with that being said, man, I hope that this can really encourage you guys and help you guys. And I hope that this was as thorough as possible. So with that being said, man, God bless you guys. I hope that we can meet in the future on a more personal level, in a physical level, that we can see each other and be able to get to know each other just a little bit more. So take care. God bless. Peace out. Later.